So when it comes to the UFC, there's always headlining news.
Yeah.
Whether it be in regards to their superstars or whether it be in regards to their president, Dana White. Now, the big thing is when the UFC sells, because it's going to, this isn't an if situation, it's a when situation, what should the UFC do with Dana White? Because he's their captain, if you will. He kind of steers the ship when it comes to the business decisions of the UFC, and he's done a very good job at it, whether you like him or not. He's a good businessman. He knows the game of promotion. He knows the fight game very well. One of the things to catch you up in terms of context here comes from flowcombat.com, which is a MMA-style website, and they tweeted out that the UFC had been sold to a combination of a WME-IMG entertainment group, which is an agency. If you guys remember Entourage. So sources, UFC accepts $4.2 billion for 100% sale of UFC, right? Prior to that, Helwani was tweeting about, from the MMA Hour, of course we've been over him a few times, this is back to June 14th. UFC sales definitely progressing, terms unclear at the moment, but lots of talks from very reliable sources. Not 100% done, though. So it started to build up steam, and then Flow Combat releases that source. We're going to get to MMA Junkie calling that sale false in just a second. But I do have to point out the fact that in Entourage, Ari Gold, who is based off of Ari Emanuel from WME, the agency, wanted to buy a football team, the LA Gold, the LA Rams, whatever it was going to be. Well, it looks like Ari Emanuel got himself, or possibly is getting himself, the entirety of the UFC.
Yeah, not bad to settle on that. But so to answer the question, should Dana White leave too? No. Like you need someone ruthless. You need a face. You need someone who is not going to take the shit that is going to come along with superstar athletes. Yes, I'm referencing McGregor again for one more time. I think we're going to have to make a board with the amount of times we mention McGregor when it comes to UFC clubs. But it's the same thing. It's like you're going to have big egos to manage. You're going to have everyone looking at you when it comes to decision making. And as long as Dana White feels comfortable with that, because at the moment you understand that he doesn't have full control, but he probably has some say in what's going on. So any decision that's made, he probably has something to do with it. Therefore, he's fine reaping either the rewards or the consequences of the repercussion of that. I don't think it's going to be up to those that are the owners to decide whether or not Dana White it remains in charge. I think it's going to be up to Dana White because I don't think they want to have to rebuild and put forward another face, because you can't just own a company like UFC and not have someone who's the go-to. Not have someone who's going to take the hit or someone who's going to be the face of it.
There's people who really don't like Dana White. They call him greedy. They call, he promotes his stars, and when those stars fall flat on their face like some have in the past, it's because Dana White promoted them too heavily and they weren't as good of fighters as they are. And to also kind of clear a couple things up too, Dana White's also been in the news a lot recently because of Donald Cerrone and the whole pay issue with Cerrone. He called Cerrone inconsistent, which is actually factually incorrect. Yeah. Cerrone's won 10 of his last 11 fights, 8 straight fights in one division that moved up and knocked off 2 of the contenders when he made the weight jump. Yeah. So he was wrong about that, but it sounds a little wrong when you say he doesn't need to be 100% correct on all his fighters. Because we're going to put a spotlight on Dana White, it's impossible to be right all the time. Yeah. Adam Silver, when he came into the NBA, was making all the right decisions at first, and then the Draymond Green suspension comes up, and they're like, well, Adam Silver, there he goes, David Stern fixing the league, Roger Goodell. It's not surprising that every NFL owner, not everyone, I'd say about 75 to 80% of them, love Roger Goodell. Why do they love Roger Goodell? Because he's a businessman who makes them more money. So Dana White makes his business more money. The Fertitta Brothers bought the UFC for $2 million in 2001, and it is going to be sold for a value around $4 billion.
Not a bad ton of profit. You
got to give Dana White some credit for that. Yeah. He's been a major part in growing that business.
I think that you can hate the guy personally, you can disregard some of his decisions, but when you're an owner coming in, you've got your business head on. You're not buying something just so that you can have control of it. And again, you do get owners like that. And Dana White probably had the power to be an owner like that, or be the face of the UFC that is being given all this power to make decisions that might not be in the company's best interest, but personally for him. But that's where you have to differentiate between whether he's doing an awful job or whether you just don't like him, because there is tons of owners out there. We could sit here, and you just mentioned Roger Goodell, Sepp Blatter, I don't think Roman Abramovich for the Chelsea football club has done a great job because their personal interests get involved with it. Right. And until I really see the concrete evidence of any sort of corruption or any sort of preference coming forward that doesn't benefit the company, I'm going to say that the new owners should have their smart hats on and stick with Dana White.
And it is going to sell. I mean, that's just a matter of time, especially when the value is getting that high. So real quick, just to clarify everything, MMA Junkie reported as those sales were false. We were alluding to them earlier in the clip, but the full quote from MMA Junkie came a report today by flowcombat.com indicating that the company has been sold as false. This follows other false speculation in the press recently. Such misrepresentation of facts in the media negatively impacts our business, staff, and members. We have instructed our attorneys to investigate and take all appropriate legal actions against the parties publishing and contributing to these false stories. That was the internal memo that was sent around the UFC, emails and such, which MMA Junkie was also sent a copy of, obviously to make the headline so people realize that it hasn't officially been sold yet. But you can read between the lines there. There's too much money and it will be sold.